Good morning. Welcome to today's webinar event. My name is Joshua. I'm going to be your presenter today. We're here to talk about church windows accounting, entering bills, paying bills. Before we get started on our topic, we got to get moving right along here. This is a kind of a complex topic to fit into 20 minutes, but there is a document attached as a handout to this event today. So if you go down to the handouts, click the little arrow, you'll see the PDF document under handouts. You can download it and print it there. Or if you can't find that, it is available on our website, or call us 800-533-5227. We'll be happy to send that to you or get that to you a different way. That is the document I'm using as the basis for the event today. If you've got the click the little red arrow on the sidebar of the webinar control panel, allows you to get that out of the way or minimize that or drag it off to your second desktop. If you have questions, please type those questions into the questions portion of the webinar control panel. I will do my best to keep an eye on those and try to get those answered, if not during the event, then at the very end. Thank you so much in advance for attending. Please keep the questions on topic, meaning about our enter bills, pay bills process. There may be another webinar event or that's better suited to answer some of your questions, or our support staff are available and happy to answer those questions anytime. We're available through support. We're here till 11:50. I'll do my best to keep things within that time frame. If you've seen at any point what you came to see, please click the leave webinar on there. This is being recorded. It will be available out on our resource center page here sometime in the next 24 to 48 hours for you to revisit should you need or want to do that. Okay? All right, so let's dive in. So on the first page of our pages here, the document, it talks about how the bill paying process in church windows accounting is, for all intents and purposes, folks, a two-step process. Okay, so right here, let me go into accounting. That would really help if I did that. Give me just a second. I thought I was in accounting. That was what I get for thinking, I guess. So here we are in accounting, and a two-step process in the software is entering bills is step one, paying bills is step two. Okay, both of these are very important steps as part of the bill paying process. Why? And this is, again, kind of detailed in that first 2 or 3 paragraphs at the very top of the document about how the bill transaction is what debits your expense account for your treasurer's report, moves the balance via the expense into the vendor to be paid. So if we don't enter the bill, then the treasurer's report and perhaps the budget is not being affected. And if we don't pay the bill, then of course the pay bills, the payment transaction debits that balance from the vendor and credits or reduces the money or takes the money out of our checking account. So 90 times out of 100, maybe more, you're probably going to be doing both enter bills and pay bills. There are certainly a percentage of transactions that don't require bills, but those are a very small percentage of the transactions or of those entries that are going to be required to post those payments. Tax payments, pass-through monies, things like that. Those would be some of the situations where the balance is simply sitting in the liability, and we're going to look at that here when we get to pay bills. But in all other circumstances, if the expense needs to be affected and the budget on your treasurer's report, then you've got to enter the bill to do that. Okay? Again, both transactions have to be posted in order to ensure that all the correct accounts are being affected. Let's go into enter bills and take a look at that. Okay, so here we are at enter bills. So I think it's a fairly intuitive screen in the sense that it always starts with the date occurred. What date do we want the transaction to affect our accounts? You can enter invoice numbers, a due date for the transaction, albeit neither of those information fields are required in order to post the bill transactions. It certainly is, for record-keeping purposes, helpful if you've got that, to associate that information with them, but there's no requirement to do so. Okay, so the At the bottom of our first page there, it is important. It says, please note the light switches beside invoice number, due date, and transaction comments will turn off access to these fields. What it's talking about here is these little light switches right here and right here and right here. That if you go, okay, I don't ever enter my invoice numbers, or I don't ever enter due dates or transaction comments, you can simply turn off those fields. So if we click the little light switch, notice it's down. And now I can't click in invoice number or due date. It'll just help save you mouse clicks, folks, or keystrokes, okay? But you can turn those on and off at will, essentially, okay? And the same is true for transaction comments. So here, after entering our due date or our date occurred for our transaction, so let's say we're going to make it Friday, we now come down here and we can choose our vendor or payee. So notice here we've got all of our vendors, but we also have our other, liability accounts here. The 200 liabilities, those are all categorized as liabilities or vendors. So you can choose liabilities or vendors. But let's say we're going to enter a bill for Don Brenner. So I can enter transaction comments if I wish. Pizza party for youth. Lock-in. So then down here we can choose, whatever expense account we're wanting. We'll do other miscellaneous, office expense. I don't think I have a youth account, but then we would certainly put in whatever the amount was and that we're reimbursing him for. Pizza party. And then we'll click on Add to Batch. So we've now added that to our bills batch at the bottom, and we can simply continue entering other bills to other vendors the same way. So let's enter a couple things here. So let's do let's say we've got our credit card bill here, and we're going to enter a multi-lined expense here. So we've got we're going to make sure our date occurred is edited for that. Oops, I can't enter a partial account there. It's going to bark at me. So we'll choose the library, but we're going to change this date to sometime next week. So we're going to say our library expenses were $23.45, and we're going to click there, and we're going to click in, and we're going to type another expense, and we're going to say that we've got here. Just an FYI, folks, in the new version, and we don't have this in the document yet here on the document, we're working on getting this updated. We've got these little paperclip icons right here to the right. If we notice that here, there's one up here next to the vendor. There's one right here next to the line item comments right here. So what those are is, I did not mean to bring that over here, folks. Let me get that out of the way. There's an ability now in version 23 to attach files and documents to accounts and transactions, okay? So just an FYI, if I click on that, it'll open up and it'll say attachment for library. So you can attach invoices or bills or documents to particular accounts and transactions as needed using that in 23. So let's say here we've got one more thing we're going to enter here for our, we're going to say we did a down payment on a youth trip expense, that we've now received a credit back from them for that, a deposit back. So we're going to click here, and right here to the right, we're going to put a check mark in the box labeled CR Memo. This is again listed in the middle of page 2 there. So notice now when I check that, what it does to my total at the bottom. It now reduces that amount. So this is how you can deal with credit memos as you receive those from your vendors. Now this is not, if the vendor sends me a refund or something that I can actually physically deposit, I would not use this. But if you do receive vendor credit or credit on your credit card balance, you can record those credit memos right there. So that properly adjusts that vendor balance, and now the amount I actually owe Chase Bank is $46.90 for March, okay? And so basically you would repeat the same steps for each one of your bills, for your bills batch for each one of your vendors until they've accumulated at the bottom here, okay? So once I've gotten the one here for Chase Bank Visa entered, I would simply click on Add to Batch, and notice it adds it to my unposted bills batch at the bottom. Okay, so a couple things here before we move into our pay bills process. I've got down here, here's my list of my unposted bills batch. It says in parentheses exactly how many bills I have in the list, okay? It would show any of the information I've got entered, invoice number, due date, any transaction comments if I wish. If I choose to print the batch now, it's going to be a pre-posting report because the transaction numbers don't exist until I click post. So just be aware, if you click print now, this is a no guarantee or proof or verification that the bills have been posted. I'm a big fan of recommending to folks that you print them after you post them because the report will then include the transaction numbers that are then created. If you're wanting to enter your bills and save them and not necessarily post them, we can go down to the bottom and click Save Batch down here. It says batch was saved successfully. So that means I can close all the way out of accounting or church windows or go back into enter bills at any time, and it brings back up my outstanding or unposted bills batch. Okay. If I want to remove a vendor or bill from the batch, I simply highlight it and click remove. Or if I want to edit it, I can simply choose it and go click edit, and it moves it back up to the top for me to make some changes to that particular transaction. Let's enter a transaction comment here for returned item. Just because we're going to look at how those comments are done, that's a good reason to edit that. If you have recurring transactions, you can set those up. We're not going to talk about that today, but we do have information out on the Resource Center page about recurring transactions, but you can set up a structure of transactions that will save you time and effort in terms of choosing the accounts, maybe even entering amounts for them. I recommend using recurring transactions whenever possible. And I'm a big fan of using the show running balance here, folks, in the upper right. The reason why is because it shows me the effect that the transactions will have on my accounts before I post them. So this will ensure, in this case, you know, it's showing my adjusted balance, and it's basically minimizing my mistakes, essentially. It's just telling me what the transaction effect is going to be before I post it. Everything looks good in this particular case. We're going to click post, or actually we're going to click post and pay these bills. Whatever you prefer, folks. If you're ready to pay them now, do post and pay. But if you're going to post them, say, today and then come back this afternoon after lunch and pay them, go ahead and do post. Okay, we're just going to do post for right now. So here's it's prompting me to print a report of my bill transactions. So again, the big difference if I click yes on that is if I click print, it now shows the transaction number right here, 151 and 152, that have been posted that otherwise the pre-posting report would not include. Okay, so I've now entered my bills. Okay, so we're going to close out of our running balance, and we're now going to go to pay bills. Had I clicked on post and pay these bills, it would have prompted me to print my report and then opened up my payments batch with the bills that I had that I'd posted on that previous window automatically pre-selected here. Okay, so we're now on page 3 about paying bills. Okay, so again, it can be accessed by clicking on pay bills right here at the bottom center there. Okay, so how do I get those back? Okay, you've got right here under, and we're kind of skipping ahead into my page 4 here to talk about processing payments. There's several ways we can do that. You can choose a particular vendor from the menu in the upper left here. So any vendor with or without a balance is going to appear in this window. There's no requirement for a vendor to have a balance in order to post a payment. The vendor will simply be temporarily negative, well, hopefully temporarily, until the bill, say, is entered or journal entries posted or what have you, or donations or something credited into that. But we definitely want to get those vendors or account balances back to 0 if at all possible. So you can choose an individual vendor here, but the most commonly used method for paying bills right here, or payments, is right here under Quick Pay. And we see a menu that says Bills Enter Today, View Vendors with a Balance, or View Outstanding Bills. So if I do Bills Enter Today, it's going to bring up at least those 2 bills that I had previously posted. and it'll bring up some bills that I'd posted prior to the beginning of our event today. So if I do bills enter today, there they are. So there's Don Brenner, there's my Chase Bank Visa, among the other bills that I'd posted as well. Okay. So we notice here the default date occurred defaults to today's date. You can set that default date occurred. You can choose a default asset, but I like to remind folks that we can change any of this information on an individual payment, just like we can a bill, for anything we want here. So if we go, oh, okay, our Chase Visa is not due until, next week, I can change that payment to that date. Okay? So if I need to date it into the next month, I may certainly do that as well. But I can change anything about the specific line items I want for these transactions. So even though my default asset account is set up as Huntington Bank, I can change that to a different one right here by simply clicking in the asset and changing that. Okay? I can edit the amount to pay. So maybe my Columbia Gas, maybe I can only make a partial payment on that today. So I can edit that and make that, pay half of it or whatever I want. I can edit the individual payment method for any one of these transactions. So let's say my American Electric Power bill is paid electronically online, EFT. I can just click right there, click the down arrow, change its payment to EFT, and leave all the rest as computer checks. Okay? You have a lot of control here, folks, in terms of how you post these payments. I don't have to post my EFT transactions separate from my computer checks or my manual checks or anything else. If they were different payment methods to the same vendor, I would have to post in between them. But if they're different vendors with different payment methods, I can just post them all as one large payments batch. Okay? Let me go back and make sure I didn't miss something on that first one there on paying bills on page 3. Yeah, you can set default asset account, folks, by going up to special functions and settings, and you'll see the option there to set your default payment method and your default asset account if you wish. Okay, that's just the one thing that it wants to talk about at the bottom of that page 3 there is you can go to settings to set that. Okay. Okay, so let's go back up to Quick Pay and view, say, we did bills enter today, vendors with a balance. So we notice here we've got a lot more vendors or liabilities in here than we have balances to pay. Well, things like our mortgage payable, our mortgage balance, or our payroll taxes, they're not entered as bills, okay? So if I wanted to say post my 941 payment for the month of February today, I can check that, click Create Payments. Notice now that Internal Revenue Service shows a $0 amount, but I just need to type in the amount that I want to pay and choose my payment method as EFT, paying that through EFTPS. So any vendor with a balance is going to show under Quick Pay and view vendors with a balance. If I have any bills that are outstanding, I can go to View Outstanding Bills and I can see those there. Okay? You need to explore this and determine what method best supports how you need to do these, to deal with these bills and payment transactions. Okay, the software is very flexible in terms of what it allows you to do. Okay, we're going to run a little long here, folks. Sorry about that. If you need to leave, please just again come back to our website later, and you can watch the video if you need to go. We understand. I apologize. Okay. Again, I've got a pre-posting report print option. I've got a save batch option. Or I've got an ability to remove a vendor from the breakdown if I wish, or I can post it, or I can do post and print checks if I'm ready to print those checks right now. Before I do that, one final thing, okay? Right here, if I click on my AT&T bill, we notice we've got 2 bills here, okay? One for my telephone bill, one for my internet fee. Over here on the very far right, I've got these 2 check boxes called separate payment, okay? What that allows us to do is to put 2 different checks, print 2 different checks, computer checks, by putting 2 in the print queue if I want to print and send 2 different checks to AT&T. Okay? This only works for computer prepared checks. Okay? That is the only option that works for. If I want to post manual check numbers for AT&T or do EFT payments separately, I can only check the Pay Now box for one of those, choose my payment method, post it, then come back in and post the second payment. So that's just what's notated in the middle of the page 5 there is separate payment only applies to computer checks, no other payment method, okay? Just a really important distinction there, okay? But we don't want that. We don't want to, I mean, we can, we'll do that. We'll check that. Separate payments, computer checks, and we'll show that. So now I can either click post. Here's my running balance again. But we're going to do post and print checks. So we're going to click on post and print checks. Again, pops up and asks me if I want to print my report after posting with my transaction numbers. So this is when I would print that report, folks. The reason being is, as a technician that supports you on this, if you call me and you say, hey, Josh, I can't find my payments that I posted or my bills that I posted, one of the first questions that our technicians are going to ask is, did you print the report afterwards that verified that the transaction numbers were created? We got to have something to go on, folks, okay? So pre-posting is one report, but after posting includes those transaction numbers, which are vitally important, well, for you and for us, okay? If I don't have those, I don't have much I can go on, okay, if you don't have those transactions or that report with those transaction numbers. Still doesn't mean we'll find them. I'm just saying we've got some place to go at that point, okay? So if we know, we're going to say no on the printing. Again, it's the same report, but for payments with the transaction numbers as we saw before. And then we're going to click no. So now it then opens up my pay bills window or my print checks window where I've got now my, he said, there it is, with my checks waiting to print. And we can see clearly right here, I've got 2 checks waiting in the print queue for AT&T. Kind of missed over on the page 6 here, folks, about the INS option. What I'm looking at, what that talks about right over here is if we go up to here and say, do I have any outstanding bills? No, I cleared all those out. So let's do vendors with a balance. So if right here, I want to do my state taxes, create payments. Over here, we notice I put put my cursor over the INS icon to the right there, and it says add bill comments to payment. Basically, if we click on that, it allows us to append any bill comments into our payment comments there if we want to print those on our stubs. And again, you can get more detail on that document after you've reviewed that. I'm so sorry. We just have a lot of material to cover in 20 minutes, folks. So sorry, I know I kind of missed a little bit of stuff, but hopefully you've gotten a better idea of how this enter bills, pay bills process works. So that is where we're going to leave it for today.